Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. If there's any problem with the audio, please make sure to put something in the comments section. This is The Body We Stand on, the 22nd of July, 2023. Have to apologize. I couldn't make it last week. A cousin of mine visited, hadn't seen her for a long time, and just couldn't make it, and that was it. It was just kind of the spur of the moment type of thing, and that's that. So, well, we are back tonight, and again, if you are new to this channel, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or wherever, we invite you to subscribe. Thank you, Veg. We invite you to subscribe or become a member of Divided We Stand. We are not monetized. We don't look for anything. We just want to commiserate with you. We do have a Facebook group page as well as a Facebook page, and they're kind of tied in together. So please check that out. We have quite a few members on that page. With the actual business page, which isn't really a business, it's just a kind of like a legal page, so to speak, to say that we're a political organization. You can find us also on Facebook. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, you know who we are. We ask that you subscribe. In any case, I'd like to say hello to a few people who are already in the chat room before we go to Dave here, and that would be Veg. Good to see you, Veg. Saw your video, I believe it was yesterday, or was it Friday night? T-Bone. Wow, good to see you, T-Bone. Very good to see you. And we have Joey. Joey, great to see you. And a few others who are probably incognito, and that's fine with us. We don't mind one way or another, just as long as you join us. That's okay. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend and co-host, and that would be Dave Price from Arlington, Virginia. Dave.
Yes.
How you doing? It's been 2 weeks.
Okay. Is it true, though, that last week's show was the highest rated ever? Is that true? More people did not listen to that show than did not listen ever before to any show we've done. So that makes it the highest rated show, right?
Yes, indeed. So
yeah. So yeah, it was. I would say it was nice to have a week off, but it was for a good reason, and because some things are more important than this show. Many things, but one of those is family. So, if you get a chance in kind of tying it into the politics of things, families are divided all over the country, just like people are. So, family, get together, good thing.
Right, absolutely. As long as they're not Trumpers. So she's kind of in between, because she didn't know one way or another. I don't think she knows the difference in a Democrat and Republican, but in that case,
but we do.
But we certainly do, and it does matter. Also, hello to Franz out there. Good to see you, Franz. Good to see everybody. So, Dave, the last couple of weeks, actually the last few weeks, and I mentioned this to you just prior to going on, and everybody out here knows we've discussed, at least briefly in some of our shows, about the Netflix program entitled Black Mirror. And I don't want to say that it's had a profound effect on me or anything like that, Dave, but it has meshed with my ability to look at the perilous times that we have right now and made me really, really think about where this whole thing is going, because you and I have discussed the political aspects on, with how the politics of this country will affect democracy in general, but we seem to be going nowhere, Dave, in a certain sense. We have these tidbits of hope with all the different indictments of Trump. We had the impeachments. We have your ups every once in a while, but more or less we're kind of still in this quagmire, whether it be the bad news about climate change, Ukraine and Russia, whatever it is, it just doesn't seem like we're able to get out of things. And with tonight's program, we're going to discuss a lot of different topics, and that's just what we do. But Dave, in total, I want to relate it to what we've been generally talking about with this dystopian future of Black Mirror. We see what technology can do. Now it seems as though, at least on the face of things, that there is a digital war out there over the airwaves, over the internet. It's just not physical, material warfare. It seems to be so entrenched in our society that though it seems quite obvious that Trump is guilty and that the Republicans are crazy, we can't seem to get over that mountain. And it seems that it is this digital aspect that takes our power away from us. So, if you don't mind, Dave, I'd like to keep that as kind of a fundamental background there as we go through all the different topics tonight.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So anyway, last night, and this is where I got my title. I was watching two different things on television. One, I was watching this movie called Dovlatov, which is about a Russian writer who constantly, and it's a true story. He's dead. He lived in New York for a while and died at the age of 48. But he was one of these writers in the Soviet Union who he just couldn't get anything published because it was, to them, it was just too dark. Because the Soviet press wanted everything positive. They wanted poetry about the workers and how socialism works. So basically, he was shut down from being himself. So he still wrote, and he wrote for himself, and he would just file things in his drawer. And he lived his life in a way that he didn't care that he did care that he was being forbidden to publish, but he still stayed true to himself, and he still stayed himself. That's part one. Part two, I'm watching this program, Black Mirror, last night, and I'm watching an episode that was, I believe, called Metalhead, and it was very dystopian. In fact, it was in black and white, and this woman is being chased by this dog, and it seems to infer that there's a complete collapse in society, and she can't get away from this mechanical dog that's trying to kill her. So I take all the things that are going on in this brain called Brian Weinstein, all the difficulties that I have to deal with in my mind about how we're not able to get over this mountain. And last night it culminated in these two events. On the one side, I can't get around the fact I feel like that woman who was chased by the dog and eventually she succumbs to the dog. And on the other hand, I feel like Dovlatov, who, because he was true to himself, he was able to stay himself despite these awful conditions that are around him. And that's what we are facing right now, whether, again, through the digital war that is going on, that was named, the namesake was through Michael Flynn, and through all the other trials and tribulations that we're going through. I think it's kind of appropriate to begin right there.
Well, of course, as you point out, Black Mirror is a show that deals with presenting the future in a dystopian manner for the most part, and that's an age-old kind of idea, and I suppose not maybe first proposed, but maybe best first proposed, if there is such a thing, by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And basically, we talk about creating Frankensteins, and we have to be careful about that because the monster can turn on us or it can turn on someone else. And right now, AI is in the news constantly, right? And it's interesting. I'm reading just a piece, James Cameron, he said, "I told you so." He was talking about, in essence, in a certain way, his classic movie Terminator was about the idea of AI, because the machines became so intelligent that they decided they would take over. And you were saying about the mechanical dog, and I've seen that episode. But also, if you remember, that Terminator just doesn't stop, right?
Right.
I mean, you think it's gone, it's gone, it's gone. And what scares me is, of course, what kind. We have a country where free speech should be valued and should be there, but there's kind of behind that a proviso. I think the founding fathers kind of had an idea that free speech was some kind of responsibility for what you say. I'm sure the British didn't think that we were being very responsible, or the Crown, when you had the revolutionary period of America. But right now, it appears that technology is outpacing humanity. That's the way I look at it. The technology is so fast. I mean, think about it, Brian. Take Twitter, take Facebook, take whatever you want. In a matter of 7 seconds, right? Or a matter of seconds, maybe not 7, that might be. Things can be around the world. And that would be good if they were truth. But if they're falsehood, that's also the case. And one of the things, as a former newspaper person and a person who still respects writing, the fact that AI can put together songs and put together poems and put together stories, that bothers me. It bothers me from both angles. It bothers me because I know it'll be misused, but it also bothers me because how much, who censors the censors, right? That's the age-old question. So, and certainly tonight, I want to focus a little bit on the craziness that we see out there with the one party. Now, we see it, and I would place the blame on the Republicans. And specifically, any Republican who would support Donald Trump. But I would carry it down. I think any Republican who would support Ron DeSantis. I think any, originally the governor of Texas, Governor Abbott, was going to run. Anybody who would support him. We're seeing, I don't even know where they get it. So let's look at some of the things the Republicans did this week. If I had to vote for most horrible act by a Republican, I'd be hard pressed. But I think Marjorie Taylor Greene would be in the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's obviously she's got a hard on, if you will, for Biden. But I question that idea of showing pornography. It was Hunter Biden having sex, supposedly with a prostitute, in a pornographic style and way. Now, is that something you bring up on the floor of Congress? It is true. Okay, I mean, nobody's denying that was not an artificially generated film. That was the real deal. But for Marjorie Taylor Greene to do that, and then at the same time to ignore or defend Donald Trump's behavior, certainly shows a hypocrisy. But hypocrisy doesn't matter. We've charged Republicans since the McCarthy era, right? Of being, not all, but many being hypocritical. And I think, well, how do you feel about what Marjorie Taylor Greene did? I mean, in that hearing, does that bother you at all? Do you think I'm not trying to be a prude. I'm certainly not trying to be somebody who says we must be proper in Congress. I'm just saying I don't think that was a time, and I don't think that was a place. And we already know how Marjorie Taylor Greene operates, and this is just another example of the worst of the Republicans.
Right, and this is, again, this has become almost the modus operandi every day of what they do. There's no low that they can get to. It just keeps getting lower and lower and lower and lower. It doesn't seem to matter. And I think what my opinion about the situation, first of all, I think it was just obnoxious, because if you wanted to play that game, somebody could do the same to her. She cheated on her husband, and if there had been, you could go a lot of places with her. And Hunter Biden, he's a disgusting guy, but he has, addictions. It's obvious. But to bring it up to try to embarrass the president, to me, it was unprofessional completely. It has no place at that level of government. But they've gone that far. I think it's almost like they don't care about, reducing themselves to that type of behavior. They don't mind because they want to bring everything down. That, the only way to get ahead is to tear it down. So we're going to do the most obnoxious and obscene and sordid thing that we can do, and we'll keep doing it. And the problem is there's a certain effectiveness. Again, it relates to what I said as I did the intro. This is a digital war. And what's the first thing you do with a digital war? You show something that's visual. It's like visual marketing. It's the most stunning thing you can show. You're showing his penis, even though it's blocked out or it's filtered or whatever. It has to be on the screen. But look, people are going to be able to find it anyway. But I think that it's putting us down that rabbit hole, and it's the rabbit hole that they want to go, because again, I don't want to wrap everything up in one sentence, but they know they can't win. They can't win in a fair game. So they have to play really dirty. And again, they have to send everything into a complete tailspin. They have to go down the rabbit hole. And they're hoping that things will catch fire. Just kind of like what happened to January 6th. January 6th told them that they can do some certain things and be effective. The only thing is they failed, but they almost succeeded. We're talking a matter of a minute, and they would have succeeded. And that's all would have been gone. So, bottom line, it was revolting, but it's certainly not surprising. It's certainly not going to be the end of it. The question is, how does the Democratic Party address this? Because this is where they're going, the Republicans, of course.
Well, that is tricky. I think, first of all, there's a question that has to be answered by every American and every citizen in the world, actually. But how responsible is a father for the actions of his sons or daughters, right? That starts basically where it is.
Right.
And then you add Hunter Biden, makes no bones about it. He had a drug problem and an alcohol problem. And certainly because before he was president, Joe Biden was still an influential American, senator, vice president. I'm sure there were a lot of people who wanted to capitalize on that in terms of making deals with Hunter Biden. We've got his computer that supposedly has everything on there. I like what Veg just said, revenge porn. I also like the fact, as I say, I'm still waiting for the P tape from Trump. I was really hoping that exists. I don't think it does. But certainly it seemed logical that there might exist such a thing. It seemed logical if such a thing existed that Russia would indeed use that. And I think you will see, T-Bone, some kind of legal action. You can't sit back and Brian, we said all along. I'm gonna say this as kindly as I can. Joe Biden may belong to an era that no longer exists, a much nicer era. And one of the things he was known as was like he was kind of like a great compromiser, right? He felt he could cross, and he did. He kind of portrayed himself as an everyman, and that's kind of how he was viewed until, of course, he gets to be vice president. And we see this, which still amazes me, how much hatred there was for Barack Obama. That still amazes me because although I disagreed with some of the things he did, I think overall, history will show him to be one of our better presidents. Maybe not FDR, maybe not Abraham Lincoln, certainly not George Washington in that sense. But I think he would be certainly in the top tier. But simply because he was black and he was a Democrat, he became, the evil emperor, if you will. Now, you have to wonder, what is the worst action that the Republicans are doing right now? So I suggested Marjorie Taylor Greene as a possibility. But I think as bad as that is, that's not the worst thing that we're seeing right now. I think the worst thing we're seeing from the Republican Party is Tommy Tuberville, the junior senator from, excuse me, from Alabama, who is keeping, I think the number might even, I think it might even be 158 now, promotions in the military, including the head of the Marines. The Marine Corps has no head right now because Tuberville is using senatorial blockage to keep them from even coming to the floor for a vote. Tuberville is a stupid man. Okay, he's proven it. And I think, what was it, last week, this week? I don't know, right? Somewhere in between, maybe between the weeks. I don't know if you saw that where he came out and said, basically, racist you may call them, what do you say? You may call them racist. He's talking about in the military, but I call them patriots. What? I mean, how do you get, well, Alabama's a crazy.
Well, he basically thinks they're true Americans still,
right. And that gets to a problem, right? Because if we were Republicans, we're not, there's a chance that we might believe some of that too. Yeah, and Jeff comes up and says, you can blame Obama, you can blame Biden, you can blame for everything. Now, I've said all along, since I was old enough to understand politics, that the president will take blame, or receives blame, I shouldn't say takes blame, receives blame for just about everything that happens in the country. When really, they're not as powerful. Presidents aren't as powerful as you think. I would suggest to anyone who doesn't, I would suggest the Supreme Court is more powerful than the president.
Although Trump is going to try to change that, should he?
Well, that's the thing, and I think that's what's most disturbing to me too right now. Or I don't know if I keep saying most. It's like there's so many. Wow, keep coming up. But how can a former president get indicted and his numbers go up? And he gets indicted again and his numbers go up. And he gets indicted again and his numbers go up. We've said before, I think it bears repeating so that people understand it. On the first two indictments, it didn't matter whether he was found guilty or not. He could still run, even if he was imprisoned. You can run for president of the United States, even if you're found guilty of many things. All you have to be president is 35 years of age, born in America, and lived in America for 15 years. And you automatically are eligible. It has nothing to do with anything. However, the trick is, and this is where we have to really hope, fingers crossed, if you will, is on the January 6th, if indeed, this is a big leap, but if indeed Trump were charged with fomenting insurrection and indeed found guilty of that, that precludes you from ever holding public office anywhere in the United States again. So if it were like yes, okay, you got the hidden documents, or the stolen and the whatever documents, but the key to keeping Trump out, as far as the legal method right now, is for charge of insurrection or fomenting, and it was. I mean, there's no question. I mean, come on. Anybody who watches that film, the video from January 6th, Trump urged that. He and he certainly didn't do anything to stop it. I mean,
even the Republicans know it, who have
they
office.
said it that day. I mean, Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, right after that day, directing blame at Trump. But what they found is, or what I think they found is, Trump has captured a portion of America. Look, Ron DeSantis is no prize, okay, but he's a little more decent, I think, than Donald Trump, or
a little bit less awful.
that's a better way to look at it. A little bit less awful. But what's he, 25? He's dropping in the polls, right? And Trump is coming up. Now, again, it's a long way to 2024. A lot of things can happen. But I think if anybody wants to light a candle for hope, the candle for hope against Trump is getting him charged with fomenting insurrection, and more importantly than that, or as well, you can do it without it, is finding him guilty. And I think there is evidence. I mean, I think there's enough evidence, at least on the face of it, to come. But then, then you've got, as I say, then you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene doing her thing. You've got her and Lauren Boebert fighting over who wants to be the evil queen of the Republican Party. You've got Tommy Tuberville running around. Actually, you could make a case that he is directly threatening the safety of America.
But aren't they all, Dave, in a certain sense, they're all obstructing, which is exactly what Trump tried to do. It's all obstructionism. And now it's not just one player, it's everybody doing it anytime they can. It's frightening. It's absolutely, because it's one thing to say, yeah, well, they're obstructing and this is a problem. Yeah, we know what he's doing. But if you really think about it and you look at our country, the way it is and the way it could turn out to be, or is turning out to be right now, it's appalling. It's everything that Black Mirror is and worse. It's just that bad. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's just obvious. This is not something that would have done, you or I, nor I would have done something like this 7 years ago or 8 years ago.
Well, that's something. It's interesting. I was going to use a time frame. I mean, think back. We've gone through a lot of history on this program. I mean, certainly there were dangers with Goldwater, right?
Right.
When he ran in '64. Dangers prior to that with Joe McCarthy, again a Republican. Certainly dangers with,
and again a McCarthy,
right? Dangers with Ronald Reagan, although I do think you have to give Reagan the credit of he was a much better actor as president than he was an actor as actor.
Yes,
there was
Absolutely.
a feeling, and I shared it. I mean, okay, yeah, but it's Ronnie, and I think a lot of that had to do with the way he approached the job. Kind of self-deprecating. Like I think one of the classic lines that he came up with. When he was shot, and of course, country rallies around any wounded president, and he looked at the surgeon and he said, "Please tell me you're a Republican." I mean, that's kind of cool, right? I mean, that's kind of an interesting twist. Or could you imagine, anybody? I don't see anybody in the Republican Party with a sense of humor. Have you seen Mitch McConnell smile except chortle? I haven't.
None of them.
And so you got, but you mentioned earlier, and I think it's something we have to do. What do the Democrats do? Now, remember, there was one Democrat who said, when they go low, we
go high. And that was Michelle Obama. But
right.
That was a big mistake.
In retrospect, well, it depends. Okay.
Well, let's put it this way. As it applies to her husband, what President Obama should have done is they should have forced the selection of Merrick Garland. Although I have so many problems with Merrick Garland right now, it's not even funny. But he shouldn't have been the nice guy. He should have gone low and said, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to push this thing through."
Now that sounds good, Brian, and I tend to agree with that. I think he should have done something, but I'm not sure there was anything he could do.
Maybe not, but he should have at least made the attempt.
I think every day I would go out and say, "Look, this is whatever it would take." But I think, again, I never spoken to Barack Obama. I did see him once in Washington, D.C. But I do have a feeling that perhaps he felt that he was speaking for a whole race of people, the first Black American to be president and to get reelected. So I don't know, maybe that, when I say color, not a bad thing, right? But they also said about Obama that he felt that intelligence and rational thinking, sort of almost a Spockian kind of thing, if you know Star Trek, in a certain ways, would be the way to go. And I think, unfortunately, now we're in a period when emotion is the way to go. So, certainly right now the Republicans are winning the emotional war. There are people, when you get people to go and attack the Capitol of the United States and feel that they're doing their best to defend the ideals of America, you got a big problem. Now we keep saying it, big problem, big problem. So what kind of solutions do you have? That's where it kind of gets tricky. But I think one of the things we all need to do, especially people that would side with the idea of this program, and I think one of the ideas that you and I share, and I understand people who don't, is you have to look at every election now as, even if you think the Democrats are at fault and the Republicans and it's not good and da-da-da-da-da-da, you have to look and make a stand and take the one that you think will do the less harm to America. In my estimation, I can't conceive of a setup right now that I'm aware of in America where a Republican would be a better choice than a Democrat. Now, I don't know about all the little, county races, and certainly the county you live in, county I lived in, Cumberland County, New Jersey. I certainly, when I lived there for the 59 and a half years I was there, I certainly voted for a few Republicans, but there was a different kind of Republican, okay? And locally, I've never voted for a Republican in a state race or a national race, ever, simply because I am a liberal. And, even if you got somebody like who was a little moderate, like Tom Kean, when he was governor of New Jersey, Christine Whitman, to a certain extent, certainly more moderate than any Republicans now, they still were too conservative for me. And I think we have to keep an eye on, Brian, something else that I would urge our viewers to really be aware of and try to spread the word in whatever way they can. You've got two campaigns out there that are bothering me right now. One, we've talked about a little bit before, and that's RFK. I think he's a loon, okay? He's a loon. And yet,
he's a shill for the Republicans.
And yet at one point, he had 20%, was polling 20% in the Democratic.
But that was his name. His polls. Name was
well. That's it. I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, Trump's name got him elected.
Right.
In one sense, and the shame of it is, you talk about the. Somebody could have done much better. He really didn't have a party. You know what I mean? He didn't. He was about Donald Trump. He could have done whatever he wanted in terms of getting in there. But his ego, he knew that he needed those crowds. Those crowds wanted red meat. That red meat was conservative views. And I think every day almost, now, there you've got Judge Cannon. Right now, of course, she said the trial will go in May, first ruling, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. And I certainly would agree with T-Bone that I wish it was any other judge. Well, I shouldn't say any other judge, but certainly I don't think Judge Cannon. I don't think she's experienced enough to do the case.
Well, not only that, the very fact that she said that this was a complex case, that's exactly what the Trump attorneys were saying. This is why they needed time, because it was a very complex case. And in reality, from what I have read, what I have seen, it's not a complex case. It's about a total of 30 documents. That's it. They could start, but this is the semantics of the Trump attorneys, and she went for it. So she went halfway. We know that she couldn't have set the trial date to after the election because he could have gone to the 11th Circuit again and said, look, this woman's insane. There's no reason to postpone this. So just like I believe T-Bone said, you wait till May. She sees the other things that are going on in the other cases, and then she lowers the boom. And she does exactly what Bruce Schrader does. When, for example, when Schrader said, well, he didn't have the exact model of gun that would get you thrown in jail or whatever, would get you charged, so we can't charge him for that particular gun. And they threw that part out. So in other words, what I'm saying is this woman definitely is going to put her thumb on the scale for Trump. The only thing that's going to stop her is a district court, an appeals court, or the fact that she'll be completely embarrassed and knows she's going to lose the appeal. So I don't trust her one bit, no more than I would trust Judge Alito, or I would trust Clarence Thomas.
Well, and I think, interesting enough, um, the highest court in the land, of course, you mentioned two of the justices there, and six of them are conservative. Um,
He
Now,
doesn't need to, Jeff. He doesn't
yeah,
need to.
I'll come back to that in a moment. Um, it's a good
But it's an
question.
interesting question,
No,
yeah.
it really is. It's an interesting question, and we don't know. I mean, I don't have a direct
There are
pipeline
back
answer, or,
channels, you know what I mean? It's like,
I don't even have that. It's like I just
no.
using what I think
Mhm.
might happen, given the facts that I know are facts and not suppositions or wannabes. If well, one of the things I touched on with RFK there, and I want to speak out is we have to be real careful, um, because I if it's Biden Trump, there may be a third party running, right, and there may be people who are attracted by that. Have you been following it all? It's been around for a little while, but starting to grow. No labels. Are you familiar with the No Label group at all, Brian?
I've heard it, but I don't have any great familiarity with it.
Right. Okay. So basically, it's another example of a good idea being perverted or having the ability to be perverted. And what No Labels is, it's a growing organization. They claim they're not a political party, but they are. They're going to be. They're talking about. In fact, they're already talking about running a presidential candidate. That would be Joe Manchin from West Virginia. Now, hopefully, Mr. Manchin would not be foolish enough to take them up on that. But of course, he's in an interesting situation because a Democrat in a Republican state. The Democrats aren't real keen about him right now because he and the Arizona Senator Zesma have really voted on many important issues on the Republican side. Now, it sounds good. No labels. Doesn't that sound good? But if you look at who's funding it, it is basically Republican money funding it. Well, and who do they want to win? The Republicans. And who probably is positioned right now to lose votes, whether it's RFK running as a third party, which I don't think he would do, but who knows? The conventional wisdom would be they would be votes taken away from Biden, especially if Trump were the candidate on the other side. Donald Trump has his base. I can't conceive of anything, Brian, I can't conceive of anything that he could do. His own quote, I could shoot somebody in Fifth Avenue, New York, and my people wouldn't care. I can't think of anything he could do that would change that. So, and it was close. That last election was close, okay? Biden, Trump. It wasn't a runaway. Again, for those who political junkies or interested in politics, I think you could name.
Well, it wasn't close in terms of total numbers, but it was close in the states that mattered. In each one of them, we're talking about you had to wait till 2 a.m. to figure out who was going to win the state.
That and that. I mean, it's interesting. They talk about the battleground states. Well, the battleground states are the states that can decide the election. Okay, New York, New Jersey, California are going to vote Democrat. No way. Okay, Alabama, Montana. Well, Montana has John Tester, so maybe not. Let's use Wyoming and Iowa are going to vote Republican. Okay, they're given. So where are the battleground states? And I think they're in two areas. They are in the South, in play, leaning Republican, and probably will stay red. But I think in possible play are North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and Virginia. But what happens is I live in Virginia, and we're in the very Democratic part of the state, which is the part that hangs over D.C. Very, very liberal area. But once you go 25 miles toward Richmond in any direction, you get into a very conservative area. And of course, we have a Republican whose name is still being put out there as a possible candidate. But I don't see at this point, if Ron DeSantis can't put a dent in Donald Trump's lead, I can't see who could do it. So, I mean, who? Do you have anybody in mind, right, from the Republican side that could do it?
No.
No. It was an interesting article I read where they compared DeSantis' campaign now to Scott Walker's from, remember when he ran?
Mm.
And everybody said, "Oh, this is the guy. This is the guy. This is the guy." And he came out like DeSantis early, and then just kind of fizzled. Or Rick Perry, another example of someone who started fast. And of course, it's not, cliched though it is. It's not how you start; it's how you finish, right? And right now, which scares the hell out of me, but right now, I can conceive of Donald Trump winning if he were to take those states that I mentioned, and then that Midwest swing, which is really Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. And I guess to a certain extent, you could look at that, southwestern part of New Mexico and Arizona. So, but still, that's what? How many states? 3, 5, 7, 10 states, 10 or 11 will decide the election. Your vote will not count, Brian. In terms of that, you vote, but New Jersey's going to vote for the Democrat. It's
I understand that. My problem is the same problem with the, as he would call them, alternate electors. My problem is that, just as you've seen what you mentioned about what MTG did with the Biden photographs, in the same way, this election is not going to be like the normal election.
No, absolutely not.
And they're going to do everything, because don't forget, he's in a corner now. He is risking imprisonment. He knows that he could go to prison if he does not win. Okay, and it'll be an indictment if he loses for the third time in terms of the popular vote, and if he loses the election with the Electoral College. So he has to win, which means he will do everything. But the problem is that the rest of them are going to say, we have to win. If he doesn't win this time, we'll never win. And this is why I am so worried, because they're desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. They're dangerous. This is not conspiracy. This is just flat out, this is your dystopian future here. It's like trying to stop climate change right now. It's almost impossible. We're headed in that direction. So when we talk about states that are in play for both parties, we're almost at the point now where it's going to be decided before the election, because the Republicans have to have plan A, plan B, and Trump will have all plans, because we know the plans he had prior to January 6th. They didn't work out, so then the last plan, the last detail was January 6th. And even after that, he's got his plan. So he's very, very cunning. So you're right. This thing is going to come down to those states, but I think the wheels are in motion prior to this to do whatever they have to do. And you even kind of got a taste of it in Alabama,
right?
Yesterday,
right
with, despite the Supreme Court saying it, we're talking about, a conservative Supreme Court. Despite the Supreme Court, they're going to do what they're going to do. And again, there's this obstructionism. So we are in a political hell right now, Dave. So I don't even think in terms of, well, geez, I really hope he can, that Biden can take Pennsylvania. We've got to do something right now, and this is the key.
Now, I don't know if you can buy an election. I don't know if you can do that, but certainly money is important. So one of the things I would suggest people do is, if they live in a state, which is already done, say Alabama. Alabama's going to go Republican. If you're going to contribute money, contribute it to a candidate in Alabama who might win in a district, right? Or look at another state. Now let's look what Marty said. Jill Stein cost Hillary the election, and Ralph Nader cost Al Gore. And I don't think there's any question about that, in the sense that anybody who would have voted, if Jill Stein weren't in there, they would have voted for Hillary if they voted at all, right? And those who voted for Ralph Nader would have voted for Al Gore if they voted for anyone from all. Would you agree with that?
Generally, yes.
Brian? Yeah, general. I mean, and it's interesting. I did have a chance to actually, one of the nice things about living in Washington, D.C., you get to go, well, prior to the pandemic, that kind of shut things down, and still it's not back to where it was. But, most political figures would come through. So I actually was actually at where Ralph Nader spoke, kind of in a more intimate setting, not a big, auditorium thing. And, he was asked that question, do you think that you cost Al Gore the election? And he had a good answer, except it wasn't a good answer. And his answer says, under our Constitution, anybody who wants to run for president can run for president, as long as they meet those qualifications we said before. And I thought we were headed in a direction that was not something I wanted to see, and I wanted to do it. Now, afterwards, I asked some people who kind of knew Ralph Nader, and they said he got a little egotistical. Like, he was better, when he first started. And that's another part. You look at these egos that are involved. I mean, Trump obviously is the classic case of someone who only cares about himself. He is a textbook narcissist. You should not want a narcissist to run anything, because the definition of narcissism is they care more about themselves than they do anyone else. You look at certainly the Democrats do this once in a while, but it just seems that the Republicans are so dramatic with their statements. I don't know if you saw the one Donnie Jr. made this week, but he said if his father were found guilty, it would be the end of civilization. No, I don't think so. I think you're wrong, Donnie. Speaking of which, Brian, a question I have for you, for anybody out there: where the hell are Ivanka and Jared these days? When's the last time you've seen a news story involving Ivanka Trump? On a political end.
You're right. I mean, I really haven't seen anything by them. I mean, I know that Jared's name always comes up with the $2 billion. Well, we need to look at this, and which is not going to happen while the Republicans are in control. It's really strange how quiet they have been. I can only think that after she testified, I think she was the better of the two between Jared and herself in terms of the testimony, because Jared, is very egotistical, and he answered one of the questions about what Trump's attorney had said, that you could, this is absurd, blah blah blah, and he kind of brushed it off. But Ivanka did say something about Bill Barr, saying, I trust what Bill Barr said. I think she couldn't get around the question. She did. I don't know if she answered honestly, but she answered enough that would keep her out of trouble. But I think that her father is, it's like sleeping with one eye open wide. He's always kind of looking at her and at him. Will they do me in? That kind of thing. Would my own do me in? That's just my feel about them. Because she could do a lot of damage.
Well, interesting. Anyone who's close to Trump could do a lot of damage. It's just that they choose not to, or they do. You mentioned Bill Barr. They do it when it's too late. Let's see what Jeff's got here. My daughter and I, walking out after voting for Hillary, we saw a poll watcher that was clearly a Trumper. I said, "You voted for Hillary twice, right?" He followed us to the car and took pics. Yeah, that's something you shouldn't do. And I'm not saying the Democrats are blameless, or pristine of everything, but it just seems like now, what should I say? The Republicans, and you've said this all along, or said it for a long time, Brian. I don't know if there's any low they won't stoop to.
Right.
And of course, the last thing, the last word on Al Gore, not the last word, but maybe the last word I'll say tonight on him. Two things. Number one, he didn't carry his own state. That's pretty bad. But again, Tennessee is a Republican area, so it might be understandable. But yet, the Gore name in Tennessee was probably equal to the Trump name in certain areas, right? Because Gore's father, longtime senator. And the other thing, I think he made a mistake, and this is just my personal opinion. He tried to distance himself from Bill Clinton. I don't know whether it was he felt he wanted to be his own person. I don't know if it was that he in some way was ashamed, of Bill Clinton's actions. And that's something that I find fascinating. Like Bill Clinton, he didn't have to use that cigar and Monica and all that thing. I mean, that's a human weakness, okay? But he jeopardized the presidency, right? I mean, he did.
Yes, he did. Right.
Yeah.
He should have known what there were Ken stars out there.
Well, that's the problem, and also with Hillary and her emails. The problem is she did. I mean, wow, we could go on forever for that. The point is, she did use a server that she probably shouldn't have used.
Right. It's you should know these people on the other side. They're assholes. They'll do everything to embarrass you, and still you do this. I mean, yeah, we're the ones who are the good guys, but God damn it, what are they thinking, Dave? I mean, get your act together. You've got to do it right.
Now, I don't know if this is another thing. We've got in that Hunter Biden thing. There are two people coming forward now who were part of the investigation who claimed that they were kind of what are we going to look at? Kind of held back by a Democrat from pursuing it the way they want. And one of them says he describes himself as a gay Democrat moderate. I hope Weiss, who they're accusing of doing, I hope he didn't do that, right? Because as you say, Brian, the Republicans will make stuff up. You don't hand it to them,
Absolutely.
And again, Mr. Biden, if you were to listen to this program, or ever call me over the White House, I mean, I'm only 2.9 miles away. I mean, from your home, you could call me over. Not that you should, but I would say you got to find a way, Joe, to maybe step outside of who you are, which is very hard, because he cannot run. I don't see how you run a we'll bring together campaign, because both sides know that can't work, right? It's not going to work. It's either we're going to win or they're going to win. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And you could look all the way down. I don't even know how many. What are they up to now? 11, I think, or 9 Republicans who've declared for the presidency. It doesn't matter which one it is. It's still them. And it's kind of nice to think, we're Americans. No, right now we're not. A book I finished this week. Writer I really enjoy, Christopher Buckley.
Right. That's William F. Buckley's son.
And it's interesting. William F. Buckley, of course, was known for his intellect and known for sticking his tongue out when he spoke. But Christopher is.
And he always tilted like this.
Yeah.
Like this evil Batman pose.
But Christopher's book was called "Make Russia Great Again," and of course it was based on Trump, and it was really interesting because in that Christopher took a few facts and kind of twisted them around, and of course was not complimentary to Trump at all. You follow the Russians situation so much. In there, he had a candidate who actually, because now here we go. See how we tie this stuff together, ladies and gentlemen. Remember we were talking about AI? Well, in this book, an artificial intelligent computer decided that it would be dangerous for Vladimir Putin to win re-election in Russia, and was able to hack Russian computers and voters and made it like this candidate won 80%. Now, in the end, Putin comes through and wins.
Right.
But the idea of, I mean, we've even lost that, I don't even know now. I don't think there's any question Russia was involved in the Trump.
Well, no, because I want to bring that up. And this goes back to Michael Flynn, and I'm going to show you, this little piece with the result of what Flynn did. Twitter was the instrument of the Russians, the bots, and
right.
Trying to shape, and to this day, trying to shape. Yeah, that's why you don't see too many things against Russia on Twitter. You see generally a lot of positive posts, about Russia. It's very pro-Russia, and this is the way that they were able to infiltrate. This is what the KGB used to do. They didn't have Twitter back in the 60s and 70s, but it's through the press that they try to put things out there that could influence the American public. Now, they were generally not successful in the 60s, 70s, and 80s doing any of that. It was not a complete failure, but they weren't able to do what they wanted to do. But now in the digital age, that's completely different. So all these people who say that, Russia, it didn't mean anything. No, it did mean something. It did mean something. And sure, they couldn't prove collusion with Trump. But remember, Trump is just a matter of semantics. He uses the English language like a mob boss to avoid any type of prosecution. And if you do remember, he said, Russia, if you can hear me, find the emails, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And there are a lot of people to this day who think that, Flynn was the one who had Snowden put out all of that information. So that Russia thing still reverberates in my mind, because I know they do this kind of shit. Okay? And it's only when you've been in that country and see what they do to their own people, they effectively are doing it. And now they've got an audience who's right behind them. And then again, I'm blaming Michael Flynn. He was paid by them. So like $68,000 to speak for RT at a dinner.
Well, and again, I would ask anybody to say, where is the pro-Russian voice coming from? It's coming from the Republican Party, right?
Right. Absolutely.
And how do you go with what Russia is doing in the Ukraine? Very simply, how do you side with the Russians? And
the Republicans are basically endorsing genocide of a persecuted group of people.
That is correct. And yet, they've got X number, and it's a relatively large number of people who are still following them. I kind of started with this, come back to this though. As we fight them, and we are fighting them, I don't mean you have to respect them. I really don't. I'm sorry, I really don't. I respect the fact that they're human. That's it. But after that, nothing really more than that in terms of an elected Republican. And you say, why? Well, I'm going to close because we're getting near closing time. My last remark tonight, I'm going to come back to Marjorie Taylor Greene this week, who says dumb things every week. But I don't know if you saw the comments she made. We should support, basically it came down to this, a little bit of a paraphrase. We should support Russia because most Americans can't identify where Ukraine is on the map. What? Listen to that again.
Right. It's an absurdity in itself. Whether that were true or not, it wouldn't matter.
No, I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, it just doesn't matter. But I think, again, for the Republicans, it doesn't matter. Winning matters. Stopping women from making a choice about their own bodies matter. Stopping gay, trans Americans. And, they can talk all they want. They're racist. They're certainly racist. And certainly anti-immigrant. And again, I find it hard. I mean, you can support anybody you want. It's America. You can vote for anybody you want. That's America. But I find it really difficult to understand how any minority could support the Republican Party unless, and I would never do this, unless they feel a religious compulsion to do so. And how do you find a religious compulsion with Donald Trump? The man goes across the street from the White House, poses for a picture in front of a church, and has the Bible upside down. Okay, I mean
that's good enough for them. But that's good enough for them.
And that's what I think, Brian.
They have a very low threshold for belief,
And each week, we didn't even talk much tonight about climate change. That's now. I mean, come on. Record heat waves everywhere around the world. Of course it's real. The Republicans say it isn't. Ukraine being, like you say, almost genocide. But the Republicans take the Russian side. Supreme Court. Who was really singled out for corruption? And I believe it was corruption. The Republican judges, right? But as we go, we used to say, in newspapers, when you were done your article, it was an old thing. You used to put 30, just the number 30. That meant you were finished. So my 30 comment for tonight is, for anyone listening, it is scary. It is frightening. It is any other adjective that you want to describe as a negative, in a negative way. But we have to continue the fight, Brian. We have to do what we can do, whether that's vote, give money, give time, do a show like this, argue with your great grandfather if you think it'll change his mind. Because if Donald Trump is elected, as it looks, well, let's put it like this. He doesn't have to be elected. Just running for the thing is going to make America worse.
And not only that, it is our duty. But and this is the problem with us, is that somehow there is this idea that if we let the other person do it, like we don't have any type of duty that we owe. We do. You and I have lived a life of privilege. Whether it's a hot shower or a decent meal or the ability to be able to speak our mind about something. We've lived a life of general freedom. And this thing was never free. And that's where I think we were all lulled into this, is that somehow, because that we had a 56 game DiMaggio hitting streak, that somehow it was just going to keep going on. There was a price to be paid, and now we're paying it back with interest. Because, as you said, we are in a hell of a fix right now. And as I said right in the beginning, it's very difficult to be oneself when, you've got arrows pointed from everywhere, and then you feel powerless. We're doing what we can right now. But you as Dovlatov said, well, no, he didn't say it. He just did it. He just said, I'm going to keep writing to an audience of one. And even if it means himself, he was going to write to himself. Or I'm going to write to the desk. It is a duty that we have. And you can't just pass it off and say, well, I don't like either party. They both suck. Yeah, I know they both suck. Everybody knows that. But as you and I discussed, Dave, there's a lot more suck on one side than the other. And you can't just simply say black and white and say, okay, if this isn't the perfect painting, I'm not going to take it, okay? It's kind of like, putting a change in the machine, The new quarter will work, but you don't need to use the new quarter. You can use the old quarter. It's still going to fucking work.
Brian,
and you've got to do something.
I don't think it would be said any better than that. So what I'm going to do is thank everybody who's watching live. Thank you. If you're watching this on tape, thank you. It's something that, as I say, it's not the most professional show in the world. We don't intend it to be. But what we do hope, a couple things happen. One is that you say the word commiserate, certainly through comments. And, we talk about a family. I don't think that's untrue. This is our Saturday night family that sometimes extends during the week. So with that, Brian, I'm going to bug out and leave the last words to you.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Take care, everybody.
Folks. I have a few videos. I did want to show a couple things. I went on a positive note. And Dave, if you want to stay, you're welcome to. I am going to show you a clip, and a very positive clip with Jon Stewart, because this is the guy that, if I were going to choose a popular figure on television, this is the guy I would want to emulate. What he's done, because I think he's real. I think he really does care. And then I'm going to show you some frightening things. And I think I'll just show you Stewart first, okay? Because we've talked a lot of things that are very, very depressing. But I want to at least throw something in here with Jon Stewart. So we're going to go to the web right here. Okay, let me click on this. We'll watch this. I'll try to make this larger for everybody to see.
I've suffered for 15 years because you're a fucking
look at them in the
troll.
face. Look at them in
You're
the
a
face.
troll.
I want the bill
You're
passed.
not in good faith.
I'm for the bill.
You're not in good faith.
So what's the problem? What are
My
you trying to do
question,
here?
my question
What is
is,
your question?
What are you
John,
trying to do here?
What?
why is John, I'm not even against you guys.
What are you
Then why
trying to
the
do
Then
here?
what are you
John
doing?
is-
Then
because
what
I
are
have a
you
question.
supposed to get this? Because these people have suffered for 15 years. Because you're a fucking
look at them in the
troll.
face. Look at them in
You're
the
a
face.
troll.
I want the bill
You're
passed.
not in good faith.
I'm for the bill.
You're not in
I'm
good
for
faith.
So what's the problem? What are
My
you trying to do
question,
here?
my suggestion
What is
is,
your question?
What are you
John,
trying to do here?
What?
why is John, I'm not even against you guys.
What are you
Then
trying to do
why
Then
the
here?
what are you
John,
doing? Then
because
what
I
are
have a
you
question.
supposed to get this?
No,
Because
John,
these people have
John.
suffered for 15 years. Because you're a
No, then look at them in the
troll.
face. Look at them in
You're
the
a
face.
Okay. Let's go back to... Right. Okay, so I think you also obviously what's happening, Jon Stewart has tried to help out, obviously, people who served in the military who've been affected by various external things that happened to them during the war, and they were forgotten when they came back. He's been there for them, obviously. Jon Stewart has a very, very high command of the English language. But he did something to me I thought was very, very important. Okay? Now, obviously there's a lot of press there. At that point, he wasn't going to get in any type of conversation where you could throw things back and forth with this guy. Because he was going to give the bullshit. And no matter what the guy said, it was going to be bullshit. So as I see it, Jon Stewart did the right thing. He went, let's just say, I don't want to say low, but he started just saying, you're fucking bullshit, you're fucking bullshit, you're a fucking troll. With that type, that's what you have to do. There's a time when you have to use your command of the English language, and then there's a time when you have to humiliate somebody, because that's the only language that they will be able to understand, that maybe you'll be able to see the truth come out at that moment when you look at the fraud that person is. And that's, I think, the brilliance of Jon Stewart, knowing when to say it and how to say it. Because if you're going to let this guy take advantage with his semantics, the Trump semantics, or any Republican semantics of trying to get around a situation, you're going to get nowhere with them. And again, it depends on the situation. I'm not saying that you do something like Marjorie Taylor Greene did, and you come out with some sordid picture of Hunter Biden. But you've got to be very, very direct with your language. You got to speak like a peasant, and you got to come right at them. Because these people don't deserve your respect. Okay? They deserve a punch right in the gut. I'm not saying a literal punch in the gut. But at some point, that's what you have to do. Because it's going to come down to just brute, honest language, street language. That's the way you get them in these cases. And in that case, Jon Stewart, and he did it right. Now, he lost his cool, but it needed to be done. It needed to be done. All right. I'll try to get to some of the comments. There were some things that, a lot of things that I missed. Again, because of this whole theme tonight, where I was going with this is that there is a digital war out there that it's making impossible for us to be able to deal with the propaganda. There was basically a propaganda war. There's a truth versus propaganda. And even within propaganda and media, there are nuances. Now, a lot of you out there will say, well, no matter what the network is, their media bought. And there's no doubt that corporate does have an effect on the media. We know that, they buy ads, whether it's on Fox, CNN, or MSNBC. But there's a definite difference between MSNBC and Fox. You will see NBC's lead show has a Republican in the lead, and that would be Joe Scarborough. And at 4 o'clock for 2 hours, you have Nicole Wallace, a Republican. Okay? Steele, I can keep naming. But you won't see that on Fox. So, where I'm going with this part of it, yes, I understand the concept of propaganda and the concept of corporate influence. But it's not simply, oh, they all do it, they all suck. That's like saying everybody's bad on the baseball team and throw them out. Well, it doesn't work. It didn't work that way in 1972 for the Phillies when they had the worst goddamn team in all baseball. But Steve Carlton happened to win 27 games and win the Cy Young. They were damn good when he pitched. And there's the nuance. It's a little bit of a sports analogy, but my point is we have to look at the nuance. We're intelligent people here, and we need to understand the nuance. So when we make our decisions, we can make the best possible decision. Right? All right. So I wanted to talk briefly about a gentleman named Jim Stewartson. He's an anti-disinformation type guy. Really good. So if you get to check it out on Twitter, I think I left a link there. I think go to check it out. I am going to show you a clip, or part of a clip from his documentary, which is 42 minutes long. But I think it's worth looking at least a couple of minutes, because he did mention this idea of digital soldiers. And this is, again, it goes back to Michael Flynn and Russia, seeing this as a digital war that must be won. And I quite frankly believe the Republicans are winning this war. And this is a war we have to win. We have to give them the fuck you back. All right, let me get to the web here. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you. See if I can make this bigger. And yeah.
Insurgency. And that was his idea. He trademarked the term digital soldiers
You still about
2017,
Flynn here.
9 months before QAnon.
Jericho was a city of false gods and corruption. On God's command, Joshua and the army of Israel marched around the city 7 times and let out a loud shout, and God brought down the walls of the city and exposed the darkness. Our Jericho March was born of a vision from God. We, the people, peacefully march, pray.
The Jericho rally on December 12th, 2020 was the craziest fucking thing I have ever seen.
This is war. We are at war, and you better call it what it is, people.
Satanism is out of the open. The Bible is fulfilled.
Let's take over the country.
Thank you for this general. We thank you that you have anointed him and appointed him for such a time as this. So we decree the spirit of the Lord and the freedom over this country, because God has brought it and has said it. So we bless the General Flynn and the
It's just that it's weird. It's fucking weird. What? What do you mean this general, this guy, a general is like a Russian agent who psyoped the American, like, it sounds crazy. I sound crazy to myself saying it. Does that sound crazy?
I mean, yes and no, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you could make another ARG game?
No. No. It's too dangerous. The fundamental issue here is that the internet can be weaponized, and there are no rules against it. 8 billion people are getting connected in ways that were never designed into the human brain, right? I mean, these.
All right, so you kind of get the point on that. I probably will have problems with copyright on that, but anyway, I have a link to Jim Stewartson in the chat somewhere. So if you're interested in seeing that at full length, you're certainly welcome to check it out. I think it's important in that, you know, I've mentioned many times that it's the media within Fox News and OAN, but mainly Fox News, that's been the instrument of the Republican Party. And now with Elon Musk owning Twitter, you know, they've got some powerful forces there. And I've said this before, that Joseph Goebbels would have envied what the Republicans did, have done, and will do. And I think this is the weakness with progressives and the left, and I consider myself definitely a part of that, that we have not been able to fight this digital war that they are winning. And this must be one. And this is not really something the White House can do. This is something that you and I and everybody else have to do. We have to somehow win this digital war. Because right now, they're winning the game by a landslide. And you just look at that lunatic woman who's praising Michael Flynn, the biggest goddamn liar and traitor in this country has ever had, maybe with the exception of Jeff Van Drew. The biggest liar and traitor, and she's going to praise that guy. And she simply comes off as some evangelical who's telling us that God basically wants this guy here. He's a servant of God. And look, if you're religious out there, we've said it's divided we stand. First of all, I'm an atheist, so you know that I have no beliefs in any kind of larger power. But I respect your right to believe what you want to believe. But the one thing I have noticed with the super religious, the evangelicals, is they're so quick to believe so many things. I knew a fellow, this is anecdotal, but I was in college, I knew a guy, he was so evangelical, smart enough guy in school academically, but he used to have these tapes saying these birds were being controlled by the Illuminati and blah, blah, blah. It was just off the wall. I lost complete respect for the guy because he believed in that Illuminati nonsense. So again, there was a low threshold of belief with these people. And as Trump had said, he loves the uneducated. Why? They're drawn in. It's kind of like, if I'm going to make an analogy, it's kind of like porn. It grabs at their senses and it affects them emotionally. It's not that they believe in Jesus. It's more so that they think. Vicariously that they are Jesus. Or somebody next to them is Jesus. So Michael Flynn's Jesus. Donald Trump's Jesus. Mike Pence is Satan. Whatever. That was just a joke. But it's this mentality, these simple beliefs that make these people so dangerous. And I'm not going to make this into some treatise against religion. But it shows the danger and the power of propaganda. It doesn't really even take much. It's like putting out a commercial with 15 seconds saying, he's going to raise your taxes. He's going to let 4 million people come across the border and steal from your stores. And that's enough. They get off on that. There's a connection in their mind. And this is what puts us into the dark ages. It's kind of interesting because it's the dark ages, but we're using the latest technology to do it. And of course, there are some there on the other side, that evil side, so to speak, ignorant side. They're really intelligent, actually, because they want to get something out of it. It's kind of like, another analogy, it's kind of like Putin Yeah, we know all the permafrost is melting up there. Look, we don't have to mention anything like that. We know it's going to go on. But Russia's a cold place, and yeah, we deserve to have like a California type climate. In fact, Moscow's been really, really nice this summer. It's been in the 70s all summer. Lows in the 50s at night and 70s during the day. They're thinking that climate change pays off for them. But what they don't understand is there are places in the far north of Canada which have almost reached 100 degrees. And places like New Jersey, we've lucked out in the middle 80s. Like 30 degrees change in latitude. And we're 30 degrees cooler. There's something really wrong. And you wonder, you try to understand why people don't get it. Even now, like, why don't they get it? And when you see a woman like that, who's willing to vicariously put Michael Flynn in the Jesus position, and even the churches knew how to do it. Right? What did they do? They make Jesus look like Brad Pitt. I ask you. You. What would have happened if Jesus on the cross looked like John Lovitz? Tell me. It's all about propaganda. I'm not talking about the religion itself. I'm talking about how it was pushed out there. He's got to look good. He's got to have a six-pack and long hair. This is what they're doing. They're taking that same textbook, the same song and dance that they offered slaves. We can't give you anything now, but in that afterlife, you're going to have something. And even in goddamn Florida right now, look what they're doing. Department of Education. Just the canard that somehow slaves benefited from slavery. Only a motherfucker would say something like that. And you know what? People like DeSantis they'll push it out there in their own way. And some asshole with that low threshold of belief will say, yeah, they are better off. Yeah, but if you, the asshole, believe shit like that, if you had to lay in piss and work, how much better off would you think you'd be? You can't even think about it for a second, let alone be in it. Just think about having to go through that shit. You wouldn't even be able to think for 5 seconds without getting disgusted. And it makes me wonder, was Germany so successful politically in the 30s because of that propaganda? Just show those films, make shit up with German women being raped by Polish men and Jews taking over. You just tell the lie. This is why it's a danger. This is why I get so pissed off. And the title is not for you. The title's for me. The title of this show tonight, how does one remain he, herself, or himself? I'm asking myself that. How do I remain a human being when these assholes around me, whether it's the climate change crap with the Republicans, whether it's Russia just volleying bombs in the middle of the city, taking innocent children and indoctrinating them in Russia, or what happens with DeSantis in Florida, that he can say anything and do anything with the Department of Education. How the hell could you be a teacher down there? I'm asking you this. How do you remain human? Do you just get high and say the hell with it? Some people do that. But as Dave said, you can't give in. And as I've said, it's your duty. Okay? You had it good. I had it good. Now it's time to sacrifice. You can't just say, okay, yeah, it's fucked up. I'm going to live my life and, go to the restaurant tomorrow night. And yeah, I know that climate change is going to kill us in, 4 years or whatever it is. And it may. But the only thing I can think of is we haven't paid the price yet. I haven't paid the price yet. And now we're going to pay back with interest. And if we win, they're going to pay back with interest. Because we're owed from them. It is extremely difficult in this digital age to stay human. Because there are people. There's some evil people who are smart enough to know how to influence the hundreds of millions, if not billions. And if they do it right, like December 25th, they might have a holiday named after them sometime in the future. It's that simple. Yeah. Anyway, I had a vent. Let me go to some of the commentary here. I don't even know if anybody's still here right now. So if I get a little too intense there, I'm sorry. It's just one of those things. It's been getting on my nerves. And, GOP, Global Solidarity. Good evenings, Global Solidarity. Good to see you here. GOP is God's party to many. Yeah. 100%. Had a heart transplant, got heart from a girl killed in a car crash. I had church people tell me I was terrible for letting docs play God. Yeah, well, fuck them. Until they lose, they have to have a heart transplant. Then they kind of get it, right? They're the ones who, they're telling you what you should believe and what not. But when they're in trouble, they always use that thing about atheists and foxholes. But when they need the heart operation, this time I'll deal with science, right? Yeah, they play both games because they kind of really know what the truth is. It's like Dave Stanhope, who said, it's like a Christian wearing a seatbelt because you're just not quite sure, right? Without the Supreme Court, the election was by law won by Bush because the Secretary of State of Florida. Mind if Lisa, hey guys, just popping in. Trump is finished. I'd like to think that, Lisa, but a cornered rat. It's just the story. Hanging Chads was planned. I don't know. Either way, it was a messy situation. Should never have gotten to that point in the first place. Bottom line with Florida, you had your brother there as governor, and yeah, Not on the cool side, far from it here in Florida. Another day in the humanities stovetop. Hey, someone come down here and help me flip over. Yeah. And the Gulf of Mexico is a bathtub. I mean, we're lucky that we haven't had any great hurricane formations yet. May not even. Who knows with wind shear and all that. But there's going to be another price to pay there. And of course, DeSantis is going to be the first to get in line to ask for help from FEMA from Biden. You can bet on that. Because he knows that one category 6.5 storm will fuck that state up. And he won't have the money. And guess who's going to come to? He's going to come to Biden. And maybe Biden should say, I'll give it to Southern Florida. You know what I mean by that. Quite a few people don't like the power of women to control the reproductive process and abortion. Yeah. And we know who they are. Evangelicals can think Kenneth Copeland is wholly drunk being divinely anointed. Isn't much of a strength for those idiots. Yeah, but they're just so dangerous. Kenneth Copeland, oh, what an asshole he is. But, yeah. Thinking's too difficult for them. They want to keep it real simple. They just want the porn right in front of them. And, in the Russian prisons, they're called zeks, the political prisoners and whatnot. I was reading a novel about the Zeks, and there was one Zek who had this wonderful pickup one day. He saw a little piece of a teacup that was broken off. They're busting stones and digging dirt. That's basically what you do when you're a Zek in the Soviet Union. So they dig up this piece of a teacup. I mean, literally just a little piece. And on this little piece of the teacup, it has, a picture of a woman with just kind of like a dress on. And it's just a little piece of it. And he jumped for joy when he got it. And this is where seance, which basically means it's, some visual image for people to get off on. And that's, how they took it. You know what I mean? The prisoners, it was just that one little thing made them happy because there's going to be a way for them to masturbate, or something. It's just, but it just goes to show you the mentality of these people. They latch on, just like that Zek. They latch on to that their own little seance. I don't mean it in the traditional sense, seance, but you know what I mean. But something magical will happen for them. Presidential candidates went to Liberty University to get votes. Liberty, yes, Jerry Falwell's creation. Ugh. One look at Kenneth Copeland, that ass is crazy. Yep, Jeff, 100%. Lies get us into war. Truth gets us out. Yeah. Facts and truth can be so depressing. Lies can be fatal. That again, T-Bone, it reminds me of this novel. And so the writer, the Blatov, he believes in truth. I mean, that's what got him in trouble in the Soviet Union. He couldn't get anything published because he was just writing about the truth, whether it was poetry or his novels. So he told the story of a young kid, and he's visiting some house of some wealthy person, and he looks through the keyhole of the door, and he sees, and this is, I don't know when, but he sees within the keyhole this little kid. He's a child of a rich family, and he's on this beautiful wooden rocking horse pony. And he said, when people would look through that keyhole, the images that go in their minds, wow, look at that rocking horse. It's so beautiful. I want to live like that. Yet when he peered through it, he said he only found the truth. How, of course, some people live, very few live well, lived a life of privilege where the rest of us didn't. And he realized that that's not the way most people live. But he said what he got out of looking in that keyhole was he was able to find the truth. Now, the truth is obviously difficult for all of us. But it gets back to your point, the facts and the truth can be depressing. So he was looking through that keyhole, and what he saw was depressing. But he at least saw the reality of what was going on. And that, for all 8 or 10 of us here, I'm not saying we reserve the right to know all the truth, but I think if you see the microscope, that blurry microscope as it is, but it's still good enough to see the reality of what's happening, it is depressing. As I said, it's hard to cope with this kind of thing, but at least you're the one who can peer through that hole and see it for what it is. And that's the price you're going to pay, and that's the price I'm going to pay, is that you're going to be depressed. You may not even see any way out of this thing. The brain is just kind of like, well, I'm going to die. Maybe I'll figure out something before I go. There's no way out of this thing. To the day you go, you're going to have to realize that, this is it. This is like a grain of sand in that ocean, 13.8 billion years before and whatever comes after. So let's do this thing. Okay? Let's roll, as they said on Flight 93, right? Jeff, I have a list of people I'd like to meet. Some have died and popped off and made room for more. Jon Stewart is now on the list. Yeah, he certainly is. I agree with you. Morning Joe is just giving Trump advice. Yeah, Trump won't listen to him. Trump hates him now. Just curious, does Hunter have what one calls BDE? And why continue to keep showing his junk? I don't know. I think he's just a guy who's addicted. I don't know if it's like that kind of energy or not. No, I just think he's like any other person, except that he has an addiction. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. We do know that he lost a brother who was very popular with his father. Is it ego? Is it infantilism that makes somebody, willing to put themselves in that position? I mean, it's his life to live, but he is in an influential family, and he was going to be susceptible to something like this happening. He's paying a price. He should. Now, of course, what Green did was just, it was trash. But no, I don't think that he had BDE. Not that I care. I couldn't care less. But he let that go too far. There is this life that we live that, we are in public every day, and we have this other life that, is reserved for that quiet moments, but you don't let it intermix. Because if you make it part, unless you're going to be like the Ron Jeremys of the world, who's just debased himself anyway, he's a scummy guy. You don't let those two things mix. You don't bring your shit to work. Yeah. Alex Jones, I need to run and get a pack of Palm House, right? Ooh, that woman's voice, and I know who you're talking about. Yeah, that's what you get a crowd of them. You talk about how people behave in crowds. It's people like that woman who can make thousands move. Onward Christian soldiers and do some pretty nasty things. Franz, since digital started, it seems a lot more people's minds are fried. Yeah, and I think that's the point, Franz, that Black Mirror is saying. Black Mirror, obviously, I believe it's, the idea of like when you make your phones off, it's like a black mirror, but it's essentially what's happened. Jeff. I'm not on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. This is the most media I do. Everybody has a choice, I personally use them, but sparingly, and I try to do the right thing. But I think it's a good idea if you don't want to get hooked into anything. Yeah, I mean, some of it's really obnoxious, and I could understand, Jeff. Musk is making it much worse. Yes, I've been using. I purposely went to. What is the other one with the? I can't even remember the name of it. Meta's. What the fuck? Threads? Is that it? Threads? I just did it because I wanted to have my voice of dissent against Musk. Twitter, yeah. I think Twitter is only good for certain information, I suppose. But in the end, I guess it's bad because, like I say, you get Russia, and they really are using it. Not alone there, I stay off the garbage. Okay, right? YouTube is all I use. Twitter quit. So I don't think it really matters. They're all instruments of whatever you're going to use it for. It can be bad either way. YouTube puts out a lot of nasty shit too. 8 views, and squirrel on the skateboard gets 1 million. Gee, my dad always asking me if I saw something on Facebook. I always have to tell him, Dad, I've never been on there and never will. Hey, Nina. Hi, comrades. Been a while since I joined the chat. Good to see you. Oh, yeah, Canada. That's another issue. What's going on up there. How that country is... Climate change is going to change that country. I was reading a lot on the New Yorker magazine about Canada. I don't want to get into it this particular episode of Divided We Stand, but there's a lot to talk about with Canada. A lot of, immigration growth. Just the scope of the way the country is looking like right now with the fires. It's just, I know that most of the action is happening in the United States, but remember, folks, Canada, most people live within 50 miles of the United States. It's essentially, if you forget the borders, it's the same. I have never seen two countries more alike than Canada and the United States. And I've been in both countries many times. And there's not much difference. As I said, northern United States is a lot more like Canada than southern United States. Patriotic propaganda. You can see Facebook. I use Facebook mainly for local. Okay, so most of you don't use Facebook here, and I understand that. Okay. Can we cuss here? Yeah, I don't have a problem with, as long as you're not saying anything against an individual. I have no problem. I curse myself when necessary. Yeah, I don't know that that media that I showed from Jeff Stewartson will stay up on the rebroadcast. Hopefully it will. I usually don't have much of a problem, like showing the Jon Stewart thing. I shouldn't have a problem there. We're talking about Florida there. Save over 2K on the tires. Okay, Facebook. I guess you could save some, yeah. I know my brain gets a little fried in a good way after watching Veg. Yeah. Brian is doing what I hold back from doing on my channel. Yeah. I don't know. T-Bone, I don't know. I mean, you got to do it in your own way. Everybody has to do it in their own way. I have to have you on, T-Bone, and if anybody should be going off, it should be you, because you're in ground zero right now with Florida. And even where you are in Florida, as far as I know, it's not easy. And you're basically living in hell right now, literally a 5th season. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But I'm not looking real forward to that one either. I'm not a person, like, it's going to deal well with the pain of it, you know. I mean, it will eliminate the Republicans, but it can eliminate us too. But you're right. It will eliminate the problems. Yeah, well, yeah, I agree with you there. My nephew almost got stranded in northern Canada where the ice roads melted 3 months early. Wouldn't doubt it. I love Angry Brian. Yeah, I don't even know how it comes out, you know. It just happens, you know. Mandates for basis of distrust of government continue with climate news. Very depressing with the climate, you know. That's another one over here, but it's really here. I guess it's because my summer's been kind of nice with the temperatures, but I know damn well what's been going on. And it's too hot. And not only do I think of people, but I think of the animals. I usually think the animals first. I'm really sorry to mention that, but I nothing worse than seeing an animal in distress. Busy paying the Sistine Chapel. DeSantis. George Santos. Angry Brian. I'm like, thank you. Interest is peaking. Over my shit? Yelling? Or not yelling, getting angry? I don't know. Gordon Liddy character is just brutal. He's another one, Gordon Liddy. He wrote Will or something like that. Another nut. Gordon Liddy would have definitely been like on Trump team. Nina, each day I try to talk about changes, behaviors, and solutions. People need to wake up. I don't want to yell at them or shame them. Just follow example. Maybe less footprint, less fingerprint. I don't know. Some people need humiliation, stigmatization. All kind of ways to get to Rome, I suppose. And some people, they're intransigent. Life will let you get away with some things for a while, but sooner or later we'll pay a price. Everything you do in life causes effects that you're experiencing every day. Be prepared to pay clearly. Yes. You might want to read that, folks. That's about right. Absolutely. Most of them, MFers' YouTube channels, I assume MFers, talk of dating and marriage, I think, in terms of left or right on all topics. Left equals feminism. Left, yeah. Absolutely. Yep. I think that's basically why Trump won. He was able to convince people that the left was going to let in immigrants, left and right. And if they were in your town, it was because of the left, not because of the corporations or the rich who were going to pay these people to cut their lawns and do the dirty work. Never worry about getting a Social Security number from them. You just let them work. They're the very same people who didn't want those immigrants coming in, and that's their business. But yet they'll hire them, just like the religious person is going to go to the hospital in that moment of crisis. They're not going to pray their way out of stage 4 cancer. Not going to happen. You're not going to grow back an arm. Who's going to grow back the arm? Have you ever seen it happen? Right, as many marriages as possible. That's about right. Not to mention, the paramours on the side. I've never jumped for joy unless it was a snake. Yeah, I mean, it's all about making life interesting. There's nothing really to jump for joy about. We're all going to die, no matter how much work we put in life. Boom. And along the way, shit happens. So even if you do jump for joy, like T-Bone said, eventually something's coming our way. I want it to happen, but marriage, man, with all due respect, my ex is good housekeeper. Yep. again, every person is different from me. It's been a really good experience. As young as possible. I'm not single thing, but how insane would it be for anyone intelligent to date a Trump bumper? Yeah. All right. You guys are great with your comments here. Do you want my guy like to get some start with X-Way stats? Guess I should turn light on one time. People that vote Trump are carbon copies of the man. Right. Right. Yeah. They see Trump in themselves. Right. It's not yours, just your turn is the mantra of dating today. My ex is a Trumper, was a drinker, never an intelligent monument with her, ever. Trump was into wrestling, part of the show, right? He was big into that stuff, wasn't he? He was involved in the Vince McMahon bullshit. Another winner, Vince McMahon. He tapped into that stupidity. 60,000 screaming lunatics watching some performance art. I mean, shit. I heard, speaking of shit, I heard this disgusting story where, remember, there was a guy named, what the hell was he? Andre the Giant. And Andre the Giant, before he used to go on flights, he used to defecate because he was afraid he'd have to go on the plane. And, he's like 7 foot tall and about 14 tons. And he had this habit of eating a lot and drinking a lot. And one day he was on, I guess, Japan Airlines or something like that. And he had to go. And they had to put him in the back and put a screen up and take big, hefty trash bags, 2 of them. And they said he filled at least half of it up, and they had to take 2 more of them and seal it up. And the people were wearing masks, the flight attendants. They were gasping for air. It was disgusting. Came back to his seat and said, "I'm ready to start again," or however he said it. It's a disgusting story. I don't know why I even said that. People have lost sight of balance of managing the information, invading every part of their lives. Now we have the generation that have only known Google. Yeah, it's a shame because it's some of it's really helpful, But like language, people will do the laziest thing, for them. That's when people move. What is the easiest thing to do? We learn as a little kid, we're in school and you drop a pencil. You don't get up and pick it up. What do? You take your foot and keep extending your leg until you can get that thing to come your way so you don't have to get up. Well, it's kind of like, I'm using analogies here all the time. It's kind of like these Trumpers. It's just the easiest thing. What do? They eat, fucking sleep. That's it. Keeping it simple. Yeah. And they want to keep that. And they'll be willing to do a January 6th just to keep that. I used to believe in demons. My ex said, "Don't talk about my mom." No, we are the demons. Yeah. Housing is a huge problem in Canada, which kind of seems strange. Like, why would there be a housing problem in Canada? Maybe it's just because everybody's kind of like condensed into one area and so many immigrants are coming in that, oh God, I could just imagine. And by the way, you can kind of see the continuum. You see what's happening in places like Iran now with temperatures. There is that rush. It's not just the civil wars. And all. The whole thing with the Middle East was about, the wars and whatnot. A lot of them are coming up because it's too goddamn hot. Which is kind of funny that people still going to Florida. People are going to get the fuck out. You know, there are people right now, I mean, literally this second, probably thinking, 117 today? Fuck it. I'm getting out of Texas. And between you and me, they're probably Republicans. Because they're the first to get out. One look at Copeland, you know he's an American. Anything for $1. Destroy the world? Okay, 29 cents. Yes. Crap, got to go take care of my mom. Good night, everybody. I'll try to make it back here when I can. Remember, share, live, love. Thank you. T-Bone, good luck. Jim Baker had a 5-gallon bucket of pancake batter that's good for 35 years. How to say no to that? Jake the Snake. Lots of wrestlers have committed suicide, died from drugs. Yeah. They get caught up in that lifestyle. Literally living in the moment. And who was the big boss? The spit and image of Trump. Vince McMahon. Shame is leading cause of suicide. Didn't think of it that way, but yeah, that's... Yeah. It's one of them, that's for sure. The society makes demands and people push to the limits. Housing problem in the USA too. Our economy cannot run independent of US. I really wish it could. It can't. Because, like I say, there's a boundary there. There's a border on the map, but it means nothing, you know. It's like the NHL. It doesn't matter, you know. It's just wherever people watch the goddamn game, that's where they don't care who you are, as long as you can play. It's so interconnected. I mean, yeah, it's two different countries, but we're interconnected here. Canada and U.S. Last comment, it looks like, from our veg. Average home price in London, Ontario is $700,000. Wow, and that's the armpit. You're calling that the armpit? Wow, veg. If that's the armpit, I wonder what the eyes are. Or whatever. Anyway. Yeah, I wanted to take care. I didn't mean to necessarily do this. You know, I usually like to have Dave here, but Dave, you know, he's been having a cutoff at an hour and all. I guess he has things to do. Hope Dave's doing all right. But I had some things I had to take care of, and I did, I guess. Jeff, I know wrestling is a fake, but shit, they do has to hurt someone. Yeah, I mean, some die. I mean, someone died up in Canada, I think. Yeah, it was a Canadian or something like that. Some kind of jump off the whatever and broke the neck. And yeah, don't even think of moving to Toronto unless, you know, you can afford to live in New York. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even have the music playing in the background. What do you know? I got to end it with the music. Yeah. That's how I will end it. With the music. If I can get the volume up somewhere. I don't even know where the volume is. Jeez, where is it? Sound? I can't even find it. That's bizarre. See, I use this eCam and it's great, but things disappear on you from time to time. Like they have windows, and then if you just move something, the window disappears. Maybe it's just me, but the kind of person I am, I want to make sure this works. And with comments, interviews, over this program, seeing sound levels. Here it is. Listen, if you would, please like and share if you think of it. If you didn't like, hit the thumbs down. I thank everybody for showing up tonight. I really do appreciate it. I know we had very few people. I guess we had 8 people, I think, or something like that. But if it's 8, that's what it is. Yeah. Thanks, Veg. Angry Brian. All right. Well, I'll just watch a few Trumpers and raise my blood pressure a little bit, Veg, and it doesn't take much. Top chat censors comment with the S word. Really? I didn't know that. Well, that must be YouTube, because I don't do anything. And I've got the wrench for a few of you. I think Veg and Trev, they don't censor unless it's, somebody's obnoxious. Yeah. Well, anyway, enjoy your Saturday night, folks. Let's hope we're around a week from now. I hate saying things that are morbid as that, but these days you almost have to say it. So if we do see each other, great. If by chance we're not around, it's been wonderful commiserating in this little boat. Good night, everybody.